It was one of the most dishonest and dissatisfying interviews I've ever seen. This interview that Ken Martin, the chair of the DNC, just did with Jon Favreau, the Pod Save America guys had been talking a little bit of shit about, like, why haven't they released this after action report, the autopsy that Ken had promised? And they were giving him a little bit of a hard time about the fundraising numbers, which have been concerning. They're in debt. And Ken was like, let me come on and talk about it, and we'll duke it out person to person on the interview. And I cut this down as much as I could, and it's sped up. But, like, I got to give you guys a sense of this full interview, because I saw one of the clips traveling, but, like, the full interview was wild.
You criticized the DNC's refusal to release their 2016 autopsy and then promised your 2024 autopsy would be different. Your exact quote was, "Of course it will be released." Why did you change your mind on that?
Well, look, I mean, what I said all along, even when I ran for this position, is that we were going to focus on the things that will help us win.
In August, you told me this about releasing the review, quote, "We have to do it to give people who invested so much time, energy, and money a sense of what happened and why we lost. Why not release the full report?"
Yeah, there's no smoking gun in the report. And I know that's what everyone's so eager to learn. I mean, the smoking gun. Guess what, John?
But if there's no smoking gun, why wouldn't you just release it then? North Carolina Democratic Party Chair Anderson Clayton. Anderson said, quote, "Genuinely, what did you all find that we did not?"
What we found is the things we've been telling.
No one thinks there's a magic silver bullet. It's a 200-page report. You interview people in 50 states. You spend a lot of donor money on it. I think people are probably wondering, like,
we didn't spend a lot of donor money on that, and that's just inaccurate.
You spent a couple $100,000 on it, right?
No, we did not.
It was a free report?
We did not spend a couple $100,000 on that. But do you have some sort of record that shows we spent any money on that?
I've seen reporting that you did spend money on it. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, that's inaccurate. And I want to be very clear. There's nothing that changed from what I said on the campaign trail to now.
When you were on the campaign trail and you talked about definitely releasing an autopsy and criticized the DNC for not releasing an autopsy in 2016, in your mind, you thought, I'm going to do one, but only release certain lessons and not the full report?
No, what I said at the time is exactly what I've been saying now.
You don't have debt that's
yes,
made a negative cash on hand?
We do have debt, John.
I have 13.9 million cash on hand, right? I'm reading the report. 13.9 million cash on hand, 18.3 million in debt. So this is an issue unique to the DNC.
That's not accurate, John. Listen,
what part is not accurate?
The reality is we're spending money.
You have this much debt. Is like that the right allocation of money to be giving it to state parties in Guam and Northern Mariana Islands when, Axios reported that there's also contemplating layoffs at the DNC?
There's no, again, John, you're just throwing out a bunch of garbage. We've never contemplated.
That's what the report was.
We've never contemplated layoffs.
You're excluding debt. You don't have 50% more cash on hand if you include your debt.
John, we do. Because
that's not true. You do still plan on releasing an executive summary.
We've been releasing those. We'll continue to release those.
We've been releasing them. You've been releasing an executive summary, or you've been doing individual lessons?
We've been releasing those lessons. The lessons are the summary.
I mean, oh my God. Rob, thoughts?
The problem with requesting an interview, the like, I've got nothing to hide strategy, I'll do an interview, is you have to have nothing to hide.
Well said.
I don't even know where to start.
It was one of the most, I mean, I don't say this lightly. It was one of the most dishonest and dissatisfying interviews I've ever seen. I mean, by Ken, it was a phenomenal job of interviewing by Favs. He really held his feet. Our pod forefathers that paved this great land for us. I mean, he did a really good job, but like, why did Ken want to do this interview? He was just going to come up there and lie and deflect.
Yeah, I don't get it. So first, I say this with one particular caveat, which is that I am an autopsy participant. I actually talked to them. There were not many campaign staff who they reached out to. Fewer still, I think, actually spoke to them. So I was one. I was one of the more senior ones, maybe the most senior one. I don't actually know who all spoke to them. First of all, here's what's actually really telling about this is the bit in the interview where Ken is pushing back on there was no donor money spent. I think that is actually quite accurate and quite telling. The guy who they paid to do this, the autopsy, was not paid, and so was doing it in his spare time in addition to other stuff he was doing. It was not like a major project, a major investigation. And, just from my conversation with them, it did not seem like they were fully grappling with the major themes of the election. I will say this, I think an autopsy needs to come out. That's why I participated in it. That's why I gave them 2 hours of interviews. My understanding is that the reason that there isn't an autopsy is because the autopsy sort of isn't done and that there wasn't actually a product delivered. So the truth here may actually be stupider than the fiction. But, it is just this thing of, I think this is entirely a problem of Ken Martin's making. One, he hands this project off to a well-intentioned friend of his, and they don't do a very good job. And now they're jammed and they can't put out an autopsy. I think that, to get to that point where there's that kind of interview, you have to be a little bit diluted. There's a tweet from Natasha Korecki who lays out some of the reporting about what is going on behind the scenes. Here confirming that Paul Rivera wasn't paid and was an informal advisor. They put out a playbook, I think, as a way to circle some of the square. The playbook was an analysis of the organizing ecosystem, but that again, is like trying to salvage work. I think that is the storyline here, is that they're trying to bail work out. So I think there are real lessons that need to be learned from the campaign. I think an autopsy needs to come out. I think the reason they're not coming out is emblematic of just mismanagement from Ken. And that is what's tragic about this whole thing. The DNC is full of really smart, hardworking people. From the executive director on down, there are really great people working at the DNC who are busting their ass every freaking day. And they're just not getting support from leadership, who seem to be failing to raise money and also making strategic error after strategic error. And it's hurting the DNC, and it's hurting the entire ecosystem. And it's hurting the ecosystem. We've talked about this before. The DNC is really important because when a campaign is broke, after the primary, they need the DNC to help them. I mean, that was our case in 2020. And you have this entity that is sputtering along. I can't speak to some of the stuff about the debt and, what they did with the Harris list and why. That's sort of like, I was gone. But, I think that there's a lot of checks that are being written that can't be cashed. I think literally. I think it speaks to, that Ken is not really up for the job.
And like across the board, some of the shit that he was disputing is either like Fabs was literally reading from FEC reports being like, you took in $13 million and spent $18 million and are in debt. And he was like, no, that's wrong. Or totally disputing the Axios reporting. Like the reporters have standards, and like Axios is not just like baselessly claiming that like the DNC is spending a bunch of money on like Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands while considering layoffs. Like that's true. Like, and throughout the whole interview, I was just like, it is like everything that is wrong with the Democratic Party. We have this massive credibility gap. And to then have a leader of the party who won that job in part by promising accountability and a reckoning, literally on the record being like, they fucked this up in 2016 by like doing this big report and then not actually releasing it. And that's how you burn your credibility. That's not going to happen under my watch. And then literally doing exactly the same thing and being like, well, the point was to learn lessons. And obviously we've learned every lesson.
Nobody knows anything.